Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is Hump Day, so thanks for thanks for choosing your Hump Day with the Locked On Texans team, and thank you for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. This episode of Locked On Texans is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty and affordable food. It's also an unofficial community center. A big thank you to our friends over at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. And I'm loving what we have for today's show. Cody Davis, of course, is my co-host. I'm Jonathan Sports Guy Hickman. We will be joined by Aaron Wilson of Sports Radio 790. Cody, a lot of interesting things going on with this Houston Texans team. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to you, get the folks to run down. Let's talk Texans.
Well, look, as you mentioned, we got our friend, our guy, our brother, Mr. Aaron Wilson from Sports Talk 790, who's going to be a part of the show today. And look, we have a lot of stuff to talk about, from the Whitney Merciless side of things, from the Andre Roberts side of things, and of course, whether or not the Houston Texans are done making moves. Now, with that being said, John, at the end of the day, regardless of everything that is going on, this is still an organization that's still got to get through the 2021 season. And at 1-5, we have seen teams in the past correct their mistakes, correct their issues that they was having early on, and they ended up ending the season on a positive note, i.e. the Miami Dolphins. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they started off the season like 2-6 last year, and then they ended up, I don't think it was 2-6. I think it was more so like 1-5 or somewhere along those lines. But anyways, they ended the season with a winning record. I believe it was like 10-6 or somewhere along those lines. I can't remember. But long story short, just last year, we saw a team that it appears that there was no hope for that organization moving forward. They had an opportunity to fix their mistakes and actually end off their season on a high note. When I take a look at the Houston Texans, regardless how you feel about this organization, like I mentioned, they still got to get through the season. And John, do you see any type of way the Texans can actually right the ship and at least get back to the competitive nature that they were, let's say, those first 6 quarters of the season, especially when Tyrod Taylor was under center?
Well, I can't wait to answer that question, but I want to look at what Christian Kersey, the linebacker for the Houston Texans, mentioned. His quote was, "Losing 1 in a row, losing 5 in a row, a loss is a loss. But that's the beauty of the NFL. You've always got another game, another opportunity to go out there and show what you're capable of doing. It wouldn't be a 17-game season if you just say, hey, we've got 5 losses, and that's the end of the world. You always got a chance to be better." Kersey also said the Texans are taking a deeper look at themselves and attempting to ascertain what their identity is and how to reach those levels. Continue by saying our mindset is basically, like I said, looking ourselves in the mirror and seeing what's our identity, who we want to be. We've got to play good football, and right now we're not playing good football. So, I think that is the basis of what this conversation is going to be about. How can Houston turn it around, and what is actually a good ending point for Houston, who's now at 1-5? And number one, I think I want to hit on what Kersey said to answer your question. Find that identity. And I think that's been Houston's problem since day one. Of you had the identity that you wanted to go with and be a part of, and that was, we want to play a tough physical football and run the ball. Well, playing tough and physical football, I'm not sure if we can and cannot say that that's not what they're doing, although I don't think it is. And being a good run team, that's not what they're doing. That's not who they are right now. And so I think it's fair to take a step back and say, well, the identity that we wanted to create when we started the season, during the offseason, the things that we worked on tirelessly, that's not who we are. And it's time to throw that out the window. And I think that's the biggest thing that Houston can do when the game is over. I'm sorry, when the season is over with, we reach 17 games. They need to set and establish an identity for next year. And it starts now. Every week, we can look at the record for Houston, and Houston record in this case doesn't matter because they're not actually going to be a playoff contended team. So every week for this team, they have a personal reset where they can start 0-0 again and work on things differently like it's the start of the season. And I think when I analyze what this team can do to turn the season around, that's just for everybody to get on one accord and play good football, which is what they haven't been doing. Whether it's been penalties, whether it's been lack of communication on the defensive side of the ball, or whether it's been missing assignments as a running back picking up blitz, or missing assignments as an offensive lineman not going to the second level during the zone run, whatever the case may be, or tight ends not putting a hand on anybody. Whatever it is, by the time 17 games have come and gone and now this team is ready and prepared for the draft, create and establish what the future can be right now. That's the only way this season is going to be turned around. Because if not, then we're going to look at next season as the same issue. And then that problem may linger as well, right? And I like these words from Christian Kirksey, who, by the way, you know why these words are important? Because he hasn't been here, right? He's not one of those Texans that's been here during the Bill O'Brien era. He's new. This is his first year with this franchise. And so he's coming into a situation where, okay, we have to create something, and what some guys may be used to that may be lingering around this organization. I think it is. I've made those claims several times on the show and on Twitter, but we got to get rid of that. We got to get out of that mindset of what we wanted to do at the start of the season. That's what we're going to continue to do because it's not working. We got to play good football and establish ourselves in some type of way. I like that it's coming from a newer player. We've heard from Brandon Cooks. We've heard from some of the guys that's been here before. But hearing from players like Mark Ingram and hearing from players like Christian Kirksey, who are newcomers, that's important to this franchise because you're getting a fresh voice from new players and new faces.
It's a fresh voice. I agree with everything that you just said, but I don't see a situation where the Houston Texans turn this season around because a lot of those guys that you just mentioned, Christian Kirksey, Mark Ingram, all of those guys are on one-year contracts. And I'm pretty sure they are not going to be a part of this organization next year, which means whatever identity, whatever culture that they set inside the locker room just to get through this season, it's not going to matter because a lot of these guys are not going to be here moving into the 2022 season. So, it is what it is at this point. I'm hoping for the best for this team, but
I would say that may be accurate for Mark Ingram, but I think it's a little bit unfair to say because I think the relationship between Zach Cunningham and Houston is almost over, right? I can see a scenario where he will not finish the season as a Houston Texan, or the relationship would maybe be getting benched or his snaps going down or whatever. I don't think he comes back next year. And I think the play of Christian Kirksey, I think Lovie Smith will be around for at least a couple more years. I don't think Houston can afford to let him go, right? Unless you go out and actively draft a linebacker to, fill that position. But, okay, prioritize what you really need. And right now, if you can keep a player like Kirksey in-house because of his play, then you do that. I think he returns back to Houston next season. That's just my own thought. Nobody else making me think that. And so it's good to come from him because, hey, listen, whether or not he's around next year or not, Houston still has 11 more games. And they got to be played on the field. Okay? And so it really depends on, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, it really depends on what you think turning the season around is. I like what Kirksey said. Find that identity. Find what you want to be on this football team. What type of football team you want to be. And I also like the fact that, it doesn't take a lot for Houston to turn their season around because they're not a team before the season that we thought, like a Tennessee Titan who had a big win against the Buffalo Bills. I thought they were a team that needed to turn their season around, and they beat a premier team. We're not one of those teams. Houston was a team that everybody expected to be in this position. Hell, some folks didn't even think we was going to get a win for the season. So to turn the season around, I think we'll get another couple of games under their belt and really find out who you have on this roster, what you have in this coaching staff, and make real evaluations, just not because of connections, but because of the players that you have on this on this roster. Turn it around by simply winning one or two more games and establishing something for the future. I'm your boy, Johnson Sports Guy Hickman, and you're sad about the Texans, but let me get you happy about saving some money with an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about. Get Upside. Right now, my listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Good Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now. Use promo code Touchdown for NFL, baseball for MLB, or hockey for NHL, and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Once again, just download the app for free and use promo codes Touchdown for NFL, baseball for MLB, or hockey for NHL. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking around to the Locked On Texans podcast, and thanks for making the Locked On Texans your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms as promised. Guess who's back? Aaron Wilson. Super excited to have him back on the show. You know, he's one of the hardest working men in Houston media and media period in the NFL. Welcome back to the show, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, Aaron, let's jump right into it. As you broke the news, Monday was a very busy day for the Houston Texans as they released both Whitney Merciless and Andre Roberts. You know, we're going to touch on the Andre Roberts stuff a little bit later, but for what you are able to share, what actually went on that got the Texans and Whitney Merciless to come into a mutual decision about his release?
Right. The decision was engineered by the Texans, but he agreed with it. So when you say mutual, he was fine with it because he wants to go play for a Super Bowl contender. The Kansas City Chiefs are among the teams that he has strong mutual interest in playing for. But yeah, mutual, professional, yes, a parting of the ways. And Whitney, you know, always did and said all of the right things and did again in this, as you know, you would expect. He was classy to the end and always will be. And he'll always be a part of the Houston community. I had a chance to talk with him about his legacy here in Houston. But yeah, to answer your question, you have a different agenda when you're looking at they're on a youth movement. As Whitney said, they're rebuilding. He makes a lot of money. He's going to make $10.5 million here this year, regardless. They had already restructured his contract, which has been widely criticized, the 4-year, $54 million deal that Bill O'Brien had Chris Olsen, the former Texans negotiator, now with the Falcons, execute a couple of years ago. So when you look at that contract, it's outsized considering his production. And he definitely, kind of hit the wall last year, had some difficulties, got COVID, wasn't a very effective pass rusher or run stopper. He still has a knack to get to the football, to find the quarterback. He has the moves. He has 3 sacks. He also got blocked on the 83-yard run. There's no one thing that makes a decision like that. It's a combination of things. So you're looking at performance, age, the money, and the most important factor, the emergence of John Grenard as a very dangerous pass rusher who I think is becoming a building block of their present and future. So he's got 4 sacks, a very high percentage of rushes to sacks. And you look at Whitney, and it's just not the same. And as he said, I noticed my reps going down. I saw my playing time. I could kind of feel where this was going. And he was not surprised. He said it was not a shocker. And in talking with him today, it seemed like he was really at peace with what had happened. And now he's just resetting, and he's also still doing community events. Today, a remodeled kitchen presented at Lamar Fleming Middle School, joined by board members Chester Pitts and Mario Ellie and school officials to help special needs kids with a cooking program, a life skills program as well. So, yeah, I think with Whitney, it's just one of those things. this is going to happen, and there will be others, as you mentioned. Andre Roberts, he was also cut, and they made those releases official today after informing the players yesterday. And there's going to be some other roster moves, bigger ones than Connor Shekin being signed to the practice squad. It was a linebacker, but yeah, they will continue to reshape the roster. And I would say, in essence, free agency has already started for the Texans. They're going to get a jump start on things, and they will look for opportunities to be aggressive. Nick Caserio and the personnel department to try to reshape the roster. And they're going to have a roster move that will become official. I believe the player will arrive tonight and then sign his contract probably in person tomorrow morning, but they will add center off of another team's practice squad. So they're looking for a draft pick, good football player, someone that they think they can develop. And I don't think it has anything to do with just, we're going to plug him in, he's going to play because of Justin Britt. No, it's about development. So look for that trend in their roster moves, guys, as they go forward about playing younger guys. And that could affect the quarterback position as well and their stance on Davis Mills versus Tyrod Taylor, despite what David Culley said. Tyrod is not healthy enough to play, so it's a decision they don't really have to make right now anyway. It'll be interesting. Once he's actually healthy, what do they do? And they're now 1-5 on a 5-game losing streak. It's not like Davis played badly against the Colts. He made a couple of bad throws, but he played like a rookie. And, he had an outstanding game against New England. That's very encouraging. Shows what he's capable of. But he didn't sustain it. And he lost his patience, I believe, in terms of the checkdowns. And then he finally forced a throw. They baited him into the interception. When you think about where they are right now as a football team, there's not a lot of hope as far as becoming a winner. They are playing the Arizona Cardinals this week. They are a heavy underdog. J.J. Watt, DeAndre Hopkins playing against their old team. And then the following week, Halloween week, Los Angeles Rams and Aaron Donald and Matt Stafford. And
that's going to get real scary.
Yeah, rough game. So when is the next victory is what I'm wondering. Is it against the Miami Dolphins? Perhaps it is. I spoke too soon because that's the week of the that's Halloween week, right? Who they play on the 31st?
That's a good question.
Am I jumping ahead? Miami's later. No, my bad. I have the schedule in front of me. They play the Rams after they play Arizona. Who's the week after that?
The week after that, I think
Dolphins.
it is Miami.
But they do have the Rams for Halloween, so that will be a scary game.
Rams for Halloween, okay. But then they play Miami Dolphins after the trade deadline. So that's where it is, guys. Yeah, this is a tough situation. But, yeah, Whitney Merciless says goodbye.
Hey, you know what? You kind of hinted at it. Hinted at it. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit more in depth, if you can, about the roster moves and personnel decisions and moves moving forward before the trade deadline that Houston, may look at.
Well, there's no sacred cows. Anyone pretty much can be available for the right price. As Ozzie Newsome, the Ravens general manager, is now retired or sort of retired, used to say, right player, right price. And for the right price, all of these guys can be had. But is it that talented a roster? And I will tell you this, I don't believe Laramie Tunsil obviously will be traded. He's injured. Very difficult contract to trade. I think that Zach Cunningham is tough to trade and get very good value now that you've demoted him and have made it public that you disciplined him, that he was punished for the Cleveland game. So, word is out. People make calls. People know. And it was already kind of known, that Zach was having an issue with lateness. So, and he's being outplayed by Conor Grugier-Hill. So then you have what other targets besides the obvious, Deshaun Watson, and then Brandon Cooks, who I think is, tradable, at least, in my opinion. But then what do you have at wide receiver? You've got almost nothing for this young quarterback to throw to. I think that they will not be that active at the trade deadline. I think they'll try to make some moves, but I don't anticipate a fire sale here. I really don't. But could more guys get cut? Sure, you could look at cutting guys. You could look at cutting an Eric Murray, but there's acceleration. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. You already have your cap in shape just to cut guys, just to cut guys. So, I think these were the big moves. I just don't see a ton of other ones. Like Kevin Pierre-Louis, he's on injured reserve. They signed him to a 2-year contract. You would take an acceleration hit if you cut him, but you're not activating him. So obviously you don't feel a need for him. Could that change if Zach is out of the equation? Yes. But right now that's not the reality. So you got 4 linebackers and you only have 2 spots. They play a 4-2-5 most of the time. And then you're going to ask me about Charles Omenihu and Lonnie Johnson Jr. So Lonnie was benched, as I knew actually more than 7 days ago. Yeah, about 8 days ago that he was benched and that he was replaced by Terrence Brooks. And that's what I was alluding to and reported, shortly before the game. But I feel like with Lonnie, what people aren't seeing is mental mistakes. And David Culley, he really underscored that, talked about it at the press conference on Monday, talking about touchdowns allowed and reading keys. And he was clearly talking about Lonnie on the second touchdown. First touchdown, that's Terrence Brooks and Justin Reed allowing that score. But yeah, he's, without naming names, he's making it very obvious who he's talking about. So yes, I know the fans, they see the interceptions, but there's also mistakes.
This episode of Locked On Texans is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty and affordable food. It's an unofficial community center where friends and family can meet up, free Wi-Fi, and enjoy those famous fries and chicken nuggets. A big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. If you haven't tried a Built Bar by now, you are missing out. They say it's a protein bar, but it doesn't taste like one. You have to try one of these amazing bars yourself to believe it. Most protein bars are chalky, very chunky, and hard to choke down. A Built Bar is soft, covered in 100% chocolate, and when you bite into it, you know it's something sweet and something different. It's more than an experience, one that you enjoy. In fact, you swear you're eating a regular old candy bar. Built Bars are low carb, low calorie, low fat, low sugar, and high in protein. All healthy benefits, and on top of that, just purely delicious with so many different flavors. Another great thing about Built Bar, there's so many mouth-watering flavors like coconut, raspberry, mint brownie, coconut almond, salted caramel, double chocolate. Oh my gosh. A lot of flavors to choose from. This month, Built Bar is coming out with a new limited time flavor every 3 to 4 days. So check their website often. You don't want to miss out. Go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. As always, thanks for making Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Super excited for the crossover with Bo Brock of the Locked On Cardinals. Now make your second listen the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available on all platforms. Locked On Texans fans, viewers, and listeners, make sure you give Aaron Wilson a follow. Aaron Wilson, would you be able to tell our viewers where they can follow you on Twitter and all of your work?
I'm on Twitter at @AaronWilson_NFL, and I'm on Instagram at AaronWilson7128, and I'm online at www.sportstalk790.com.
Awesome. Make sure you give him a follow. He has great work. I love his work. Aaron, I want to piggyback off your keeper statement before we look at Sunday's game and Houston and Nick Caserio and his personnel department, along with the coaching staff, really trying to find players that they can bring back for next year. Now, I think it's safe to say that maybe Scotty Phillips and David Johnson don't make that list, but is it finally time? Do you know anything that maybe Scotty Phillips will eventually start getting some playing snaps at running back coming up soon?
There has been no enthusiasm expressed by David Culley to play Scotty Phillips. And, let's be realistic. Scotty did some nice things in the preseason, but he's played in the regular season before. He didn't make that much noise. I think he's okay. He wasn't even as productive as Buddy Howe. And there's this dangerous tendency from all of us, whether we're fans or media, you look at, well, this guy's not getting it done. They just got to try this guy. I just want to see him. But satisfying our curiosity isn't the way to run a football team. I think we can all agree that if they just run a suggestion box, we've all covered the league long enough to realize that you have to have an independence, a thought process, and a system. And yes, mistakes are made, but I just don't feel like, even though I like Scotty, I'm just not sure that they're leaving something on the bench that's great. I'm also not seeing great runs, from other. Ingram is the best back. He's the guy that can move the pile. He gets yards. He runs tough. There aren't a lot of holes to run through. We finally saw a good run from Lindsey. As David Johnson said today at an anti-bullying event, he had a very rough game against the Colts. That blitz pickup whiffed. That was very bad for David. He didn't bring up the play, but, he just mentioned the game. That was obviously the most glaring play for David, and also a fumble. So, and he's going to be playing, obviously, the Cardinals, his old team, the team he was traded for, DeAndre Hopkins. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. And he says it's going to feel weird and all of those things. Maybe we weren't tough enough. We didn't ask him, like, hey, how does it feel to be the guy that's not having the production, but they're undefeated? I talked about their record and where the Texans are, but, I didn't want to, be too harsh, I guess. I don't know. Guys there mostly to talk about fighting bullying, and he was a victim, he said, of bullying when he was a kid growing up in Iowa and was there with the mascot. So, yeah, we talked a little bit of football and that kind of thing. But, yeah, when I think about the backfield, it's just not dynamic, and it doesn't matter who's in the game. But to me, the best guy they have is Ingram, and that's why he's been to 3 Pro Bowls.
If I could just say something, I think the fans wanting to see Scotty Phillips is warranted because the 2009 season, Steve Slayton, Ryan Moats, and Chris Brown, none of those guys averaged 4 yards per carry, and that was one of the worst Houston seasons as a running team that they've ever had in their franchise. And you know who they finally gave playing time to towards the end of the year? Arian Foster, and that worked out well. Go ahead, Cody.
Interesting. It's Scotty and Arian. Maybe
both undrafted.
They do share that. What they don't share is that Arian, I think, is like 4 inches taller than Scotty and has a running style that I think is very hard to stop as a zone guy, and great hands. Could have probably been a wide receiver. But, yeah, Scotty, you give up a lot in pass pro because of his size. I think that's what they're not saying, is if you put him in, what happens to the quarterback if he has to pass block? I tell you, because if you're going to just run the ball and that's all you can do, he's not much of a receiver. It better be a heck of a trick if you're a one-trick pony.
Aaron,
he better be Barry Sanders special.
Oh, well, they ain't gonna happen.
That's what I'm saying. It's what they're not saying, and they've shown no confidence in the man. I think there are other backs out there, even on the streets, that you might want to think about. And other teams do have tryouts and bring in guys, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But you saw the Ravens basically brought in a bunch of guys off the street, and they still are running the ball. Exactly. They have Lamar Jackson, but in the offensive line. But that said, they've lost a lot of guys, and they're still running the ball. So it's not just the players; it's the system, it's the coaching, and you guys know, because Chris Moore announced it, which is unusual. Most times players don't announce the player-only meeting. Kind of one of those rules like Fight Club. You don't talk about Fight Club. You just don't talk about player-only meetings. That's why Malik Collins was surprised, I think, to be asked about the player-only meeting on Monday. But, I think that's interesting, guys. What do you think? I mean, a player-only meeting, usually you do that when you're in a crisis. But obviously the player-only meeting didn't change anything. They still lost the game. They lost 31-3. They've been outscored 71-3 against Buffalo and Indianapolis on the road, the last 2 road games.
I mean, it lets you know that this is an organization that is not going to be good, because normally it doesn't matter what's going on. Anytime a team has a player only meeting, at least for that next game, they're going to come out and be competitive and actually win that game. But it seems like the Houston Texans did the complete opposite. Speaking of moving forward, Aaron, Week 7 is a game a lot of people had circled on their calendars, and this Houston Texans team will be going up against a 6-0 Arizona Cardinals. Aaron, do you see any way the Houston Texans can actually turn their season around and at least be the competitive team that we thought we was going to see heading into the season? And DeAndre Hopkins and JJ Watt. You had an opportunity to cover both of those guys while they was here in Houston and develop a relationship. Do you think those guys are going to play with a chip on their shoulders when they go up against the Texans? And I say that because, yes, they had a lot of beef with this organization, but especially for JJ Watt, it seems like his beef was centered more so towards Bill O'Brien, and Bill O'Brien isn't here. And this organization has went through so many changes, but do you think they're just going to come out and try to destroy the Texans like we all think they will?
Right? Why not? If you're JJ, I think he hasn't had a gigantic season, but this is the kind of offensive line that JJ can play very well against. He's going to try to jump passing lanes. He's going to try to make some plays, and JJ he's a very prideful guy. He will want to serve notice that I'm still JJ Watt. And, when you think about a different circumstance, he asked out. He did not want to be here anymore. It's a really important distinction. And they granted his wishes. And so what's happened? He's on an undefeated team, which shows that JJ was pretty smart. He picked a team with a good young quarterback and a coach that he thought would be cool to play for. And he's contributing. He had an injury in the preseason, and the guy now, you look at, how he's performed, and, he's made a few plays. Yes, he only has 1 sack, but he's also forced a fumble. He's got 4 tackles for losses. He's hit the quarterback 9 times. That's pretty good. Texans would take that, and I'm sure the sacks will come. He's playing on a team with Chandler Jones and with Corey Peters and some other good players, and they blitz Budda Baker. They do a lot of things. But you think about DeAndre Hopkins. And, yeah, Bill O'Brien's gone, the man that he had the beef with, the man that traded him. But Cal McNair and the guys that empowered Bill, they're still here. And yes, I do think he will try to prove a point. And I don't think the Texans have anywhere close to a shutdown corner. If he wants to make things happen, he will be able to do it. They're going to have to hit Diop, and that probably means Justin Reed is going to have to bring it to him. If you don't get physical with Hopkins, you have no chance.
Man, I don't think Houston has a chance to get physical with him or not on Sunday. Thank you guys for checking out the Locked On Texans podcast, viewing us on Twitter. Viewing us on YouTube. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texans. Like us on Facebook. Make sure you give Aaron Wilson a follow. This man is amazing at his job, and I got to tell you, he's always right as well. Follow me on Twitter at Some Sports Guy. My partner in crime over there on the other side. Cody, where can they find you as well?
You can find me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.